When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might go and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. They had been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" When they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled back. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He is not here. Look, there is the place they laid him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." So they went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid.
Praise God for the hearing of these sacred words. You can remain standing. No, you can sit down. I don't even think standard's a word, but whatever. It's Easter, right? So let's begin with the moment of prayer. Would you pray with me? Lord, in these next moments, I ask that you would take the words of my mouth, the meditations of all of our hearts, would work and move in such a way that they would be made to be acceptable in your sight. For indeed, you are our rock, and you are our risen Lord. Amen. When I was a kid, Easter was number 4 on my holiday list. Christmas was number 1 because, well, there were presents. Thanksgiving was number 2 because often it coincided with my birthday. So again, you guessed it, there were presents. 4th of July was number 3. No presents, but there were fireworks, and that's pretty cool. I guess I should say they were kind of hot, but you get the point. And then there was Easter, number 4. While I appreciated the Easter basket, while I liked that the weather was getting warmer, what I did not like was having to get extra dressed up to go to church, and I did not like traipsing across the street to the church at 5 a.m. in the morning for an Easter sunrise service, and I did not look forward to hearing not one but 2 sermons on Easter. 1 sermon for Easter is enough for me. Thank you very much. Easter, when I was a child, number 4 on my list. When you were a child, what number was Easter on your list? What number is Easter on your list? Of course, as Christians, as an Easter people, Easter is supposed to be number 1 because without Easter, well, we wouldn't know about Jesus. If his life ended with a crucifixion, with an execution, he would have been forgotten, not noticed, much like his people, forgotten, not noticed. I mean, think about it. Jesus grew up in a forgotten place. He was from a forgotten town. He lived in the midst of a forgotten people raised by some forgotten parents, except for the thing is this: he believed. He believed in a God that would not, could not forget about anyone. And he believed it so strongly, he believed it so vehemently that he took his story and he took his song of a God that would not forget. He took that story, he took that song to Jerusalem. And he told the governor there, the high priest there, all the to-dos there. He told them of this God that would not forget, in hopes that they would see. And what did they do? They crucified him. executed him. Why? Because sometimes it's just easier, isn't it? Not to see. Imagine the surprise when Jesus was raised from the dead. That one, that guy, the one that the world had forgotten about, the one that the world hadn't noticed, the one that the world had tossed aside. Imagine the surprise when God raised Jesus from the dead. And hear me when I say this, folks. I'm not just saying that Jesus was risen metaphorically. I'm not just saying that Jesus was raised symbolically. I'm not just saying that Jesus was raised parabolically. Nothing like that at all. No, God raised Jesus from the dead. And he appeared to his friends, and they saw him. And if that didn't happen, you wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here talking about Jesus today. You see, to be a Christian person, to be an Easter person, it's all about witnessing to this love that refuses to forget. It's all about bearing witness to this love that notices people. And yet, here's the problem. We're like the women at the tomb. According to Mark's gospel, they said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. Did you notice that zinger? I love Mark. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. Wait a minute. Come again? That doesn't feel like Easter. And see, that's what's so fun about all this. Every one of the gospel writers has their own way of telling the story of Easter. Just like us, just like you. You have your own way of telling the story of Easter too. Matthew's gospel, for example. The ladies go to the tomb. Angels there. They tell him that Jesus is risen, and they go away from the tomb with confidence. And on their way to tell the disciples the good news, the risen Lord appears to them and says, "Greetings, rejoice." That feels a lot like Easter, doesn't it? Or Luke's gospel. Luke's gospel, there's strangers walking on the road to Emmaus. They're chit-chatting it up. Did you see that post they're saying? Jesus is risen. Oh my goodness. And all at once the risen Christ appears to them and says, "Hey guys, what are you talking about?" They don't even recognize him at first. Not until later on when Jesus breaks bread and then, whew, their eyes are open and they see, that feels like Easter. And then there's John. Thank you very much. You can go ahead and thank me later. Or you're welcome very much. You can go and thank me later. We didn't read John this morning. If we read the John account of the Easter story, you'd be still standing as we were reading it. Mary Magdalene standing at the tomb, weeping. She mistakes Jesus for a gardener. And then Jesus says her name, Mary. Mary sees and she says, "My Lord, my God." All of these sound a lot like Easter to me, except for the problem is they don't sound a lot like me. I'm with the women at the tomb in Mark. I know about Easter. I've heard about Easter. But my tendency is I say nothing to anyone because, well, I'm afraid. If that sounds like you today, I bring good news for you. I bring great joy for you. Here it is. God's not forgotten you. Jesus can still appear to you. And here's how. Here's the formula. Practice Easter until you have it. And then once you have it, you'll practice it. It all starts, you see, with broadening our understanding of what love is. That's where it starts. It starts with broadening our understanding of what love is. You see, we live in a culture today, we live in a time today that suffers from a limited understanding of what love is. We think love is all warm and fluffy feelings. We think love is all rainbows and unicorns. We think love is all about life going our way, and then when it goes our way, what do we say? We love it. The only problem with that is that's not the Easter sort of love. That's not the Christian sort of love. That's not the sort of love that we are called to as followers of Jesus Christ. No, it's not a sit back and wait sort of love. No, it's a get up and get going sort of love. In fact, here's my definition for what love is. Love is about going out of our way to make other people feel like they are important and that they matter to us. That's love. Love is about going out of our way to make people feel like they know that they're not forgotten. That's love. I mean, isn't that what the angel told the ladies at the tomb? Think about it. Step 1, walk away from the tomb. Step 2, go chase down the disciples and let them know that they matter, that they're important. Step 3, Christ will appear. The problem is, though, we get stuck, don't we? At the tomb. We get caught up in the tomb. We all have a tomb. We all have something, somehow. It happened where the world broke our heart. Life didn't go as planned. It could be the loss of a loved one. It could be the loss of a job. It could be that someone just really hurt us. Or it could be quite simply that when we imagined our life, this is not what we planned. Tomb. And if we're not careful, we get stuck there at the tomb. And we don't reach out. We don't notice other people. We don't tell them that they matter to us and why. Because we're just afraid we'll get rejected again. We don't need another tomb. In working on my sermon this week, I came across 2 studies. Both of these studies talk about why we struggle telling other people that they matter to us. The first one comes from a study from Harvard on adult development. And they said the number one reason that we don't tell people that they matter to us, the number one reason we struggle with relationships is because we get caught up wondering if we're going to do it wrong. The second study I came up with came from the University of Chicago. They said that the number one reason we struggle with relationships, the number one reason why we don't tell people that they matter to us is because we underestimate the power that it would have if we did it. Let me let you in on a little secret. There is no way, well, almost no way of telling someone that they matter to you. Of chasing someone down, telling them that they are important to you. There's no wrong way to notice people. For me, Easter happened this week on a Wednesday. I got up, was getting ready to go for a run. It was 5 o'clock in the morning. The world, I know, spoiler alert, was still very quiet at that point. My dog Chip and I were getting ready to jog. I opened up the front door, and there it was, a sign, a poster. It said, "Happy Easter. You've been egged." The night before, some people hid 12 eggs in our front yard. And why? Because they noticed us. Because they saw us. Because they knew that we had 2 little girls that lived at that house that would get excited about hunting Easter eggs on a Wednesday morning in their pajamas, and they wouldn't care if anyone else saw them. They knew us. And in that moment, when I saw that sign, I realized, not alone. For me, when I think about the love of Easter, the love of Christianity, the get up and go sort of love, the person that comes to my mind is our crazy mail lady that we used to have. She was different. She'd drive around delivering the mail, and she would talk to herself as she did it. It was odd. But she knew we had a dog. At the time, our dog's name was Sally. And Sally was this 80-pound aircraft carrier of a golden retriever. And that mail lady would bring treats for Sally. And Sally knew that mail lady had treats. So much so that if you were out walking Sally and the mail lady came, she would literally pull you across the street to get to the mail lady, and the mail lady would hand Sally treats, pet Sally's head, and say, "Oh, Sally, it's good to see you." I took it all for granted until she retired. And now our mail person doesn't say anything at all. When I think about Easter, I think about my dad. A year ago, January, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer, which meant last year was his last Easter. He couldn't even go to church on Easter last year. He was so sick. But here's the thing, that the Easter before his last Easter, he was retired. And he made the trip from Mooresville, Indiana, all the way down here to Evansville, Indiana, 2.5-hour trip. He came here and he worshiped with us. He sat at the second pew with my mom. And afterwards, here's what he said. "Andrew, proud of you. Good job." This Easter, my dad lives on in the heart of God. But he lives on in the heart of me, too. And why? Because he told me. Because he told me. If you can, here's the thing, if you can put eggs in someone's yard, if you can give a dog a treat and remember its name, if you can go out of your way to tell your child that you're proud of them, that they get a good job, here's the thing. You can practice the love of Easter. Oh, how foolish we are. We just sit back and wait for Easter, don't we? We just sit back and wait for the world to change, don't we? We just wait for Easter to come our way. And then when it doesn't happen, when life doesn't go as planned, what happens? It becomes a tomb. And our inner life becomes like a graveyard of bitterness because life didn't go our way. All the while, the chasms that exist between us, they grow. The very thing that Jesus died to take away, it grows. All the while, you know what the angel is telling us? It's time to get up and walk away from that tomb. It's time to go back to Galilee, where home is, and tell people, hey, God sees you. God hasn't forgotten about you. I see you. I haven't forgot about you either. This Easter Sunday, the challenge is simple. Go out of your way to tell someone they matter to you. Go out of your way to do it. You won't regret it. They won't regret it. And here's the promise. In that moment where you tell them, Christ appears. And you see that life is greater than death. That love is greater than hate and indifference. Who knows? Maybe Easter will go from number 4, number 3, number 2. Maybe it'll become number 1 on your list. On this Easter Sunday, in just a few moments, we're going to sing, Christ the Lord is risen. When? Yesterday? No. Tomorrow? No. Today. And why? Because we're Easter people. We're here because we're interested in practicing the love of Easter. We're here because we're a people that are ready to get up and get going. Let us stand together and let us sing.